Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson alongside Tony Tsoukalis, our team rider, coming to you on our YouTube channel. This is the Talk of Champions. Today on the program, we're going to talk about a variety of topics. And first off, I wanted to welcome in Tony to the show. You know, it's probably long overdue, but Tony, how are things going, man?
Things are going pretty well.
Tony, like Andrew Bone, is freshly married, so congratulations, Tony. All of our staff, including Mike Johnson, who was helping us out from April, he got married as well. So everybody's married, so got that out of the way. Tony, yesterday, Alabama released new measurements for players, and there's some big changes from the fall of last year to now. So can you talk about some notable movements? I mean, there's some guys who have dropped some weight, but some guys who have definitely put on some pounds. Who are some notable guys? And let's start there to open up the show.
Yeah, so if you look at a guy like Christian Barmore, he put on 18 pounds. He's the biggest weight gainer of all the scholarship players. I mean, there's a few walk-on players that kind of skew things, but Christian Barmore is up to 6'5", 310. From what he was last year at this time, he was measured in at 6'5", 292. So I think that weight allows him to kind of be a more meteor option up front and maybe kind of play both positions. He could probably play on the edge or maybe even shift into a defensive tackle role, which, considering Alabama's depth at defensive tackle, probably be handy if he could at least kind of provide somewhat of a depth at that position as well. As for people that lost weight, Emil Ekiyor at this time last year was weighing 6'3", 342. Now he's 6'3", 327. I think a lot of that's probably he lost some bad weight. So if you look at where Alabama's offensive linemen are, that's 6'3", 327. That's probably all a lot better weight than what he probably came in a little bit heavy as a freshman last year.
You know, we got a chance to see Evan Neal, and he's a monster. I mean, and I've talked about this several times. Every time you see Alabama's offensive linemen, they stand out. All of them are gigantic humans, but Evan Neal seems to stand out just a little bit more. 6'7", 360 pounds. What did you see, Tony, this spring from Evan Neal? Can you elaborate a little bit on him? Because I was really impressed with his overall movement for him just coming in. What about you?
Yeah, he's definitely somebody that has some size, and I think Alabama moved him up to the second team at times during practices. Um, I think at 6'7", he probably wants to be a little bit lighter than 360. And I know it sounds great to have a guy that's like this mountain of a guy, but you look at a guy like Matt Womack's weighing at 325 at the same height. Scott Latchy's at 307 at the same height. Tommy Brown's at 317 at the same height. Jedrick Wills is at 320 at the same height. So I think you probably want Evan Neal to drop at least 15, 20 pounds by this time next year when we're doing this again. And with Alabama's conditioning program, he should be able to do that. But obviously, the kid has a ton of potential, and he's a mountain, So you can't teach that size. So he's definitely one to circle for the future.
You can catch all our coverage back on BamaInsider.com. Obviously, my name is Kyle Henderson, managing editor of the website, alongside with our team writer Tony Tsoukalis, and Andrew Bone, as you know, is our recruiting guy. So be sure and follow all our coverage on BamaInsider.com, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff, all the same, BamaInsider.com. Tony, we have a call-in program on YouTube, as you know, and people call in and they ask questions. They want to talk about Alabama football. They want to talk Alabama recruiting. I'm going to play a couple of those voicemails. We'll talk about them and answer some of these questions moving forward. So here's our first question.
Hey, my name is Adrian, calling from Richmond, Virginia. I was calling to ask, which position group do you guys think will have the most improvement from last year? O-line, D-line, or, the secondary. I was just calling in to get that question answered. All right.
All right. Did you hear that okay, Tony?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? Thanks for the call, by the way, Adrian, calling from Virginia. So in terms of a position group that you feel might be most improved year over year, what's your take on that, Tony?
I think you definitely point to secondary. You look at this time last year, Alabama had to replace its entire dime secondary. They do lose Deontay Thompson and Savion Smith this season, but you also have nobody else gone except for that, and you also get the return of Trayvon Diggs, who missed pretty much half the season with a broken foot. I think you're going to have a lot more experience at that position and a lot more depth. There's a lot of talent even outside of the experienced portion of it. And you've got a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. You got a guy like Shaheem Carter. Nick Saban's referred to him as a jack of all trades, kind of a little bit of a Swiss Army knife there, where he can play safety or he can play star like he did last year. I guess you could line him up at corner, but Alabama wouldn't need to do that with the cornerbacks they have. Then you also got guys like Trayvon Diggs and Patrick Surtain. They could also possibly play that star position as well. So if you needed to play Shaheem Carter at safety, maybe to fill in for Deontay Thompson, then you could put a Trayvon Diggs or Patrick Surtain II at star, and then maybe slide in a Josh Jobe, Jalen Armour Davis, whoever kind of emerges from that group at that open cornerback slot. There's a lot of things they can do. I mean, you could move Jared Maiden down to the star position if you wanted to. So there's a lot of different kind of ways this puzzle could shape together, but I definitely point to that as the strongest unit. I think there's also a lot of strength on the offensive line, especially if they add that grad transfer from Florida State. So there's a lot of depth and talent at both those spots. I think that's. Oh, and then wide receiver, of course. So we can't skip over that as a position of strength. But as far as I think the question was most improved, I'd go with secondary.
What about? We don't see a lot of the kicking game, but we did see some of the new kickers during A-Day. What's your assessment there? Because, this team on paper all the time is, every single position, you got 5 stars, 4 stars all around, tons of returners. But the kicking game and the punting game was average, I guess you could say. And that might be putting it nicely. What we got Will Reichert coming in. Joseph Bolivas is still here. Skylar DeLong looks to retain his punting position. So, what's your take on place kicking and the punting game for the Crimson Tide?
Oh yeah, I kind of overlooked that in my last. If you look at a unit with the most room for improvement, it'd have to be if you just consider punting and kicking, I think it'd be punting and kicking. The funny thing about Alabama's kicking game is the actual kickoff units and punt coverage units or punt return units they're actually pretty decent. It was really just the punting and the kicking that struggled. If you remember, I think Jeff Banks won an award for coaching the special teams from all the other stuff that they were able to do. But but if you look at it, the extra points were problematic, and so was the punting average. I think you're obviously going to get. You can't really get much worse with the extra points than what they were. I don't think Alabama fans want to jinx that, but last year was about as bad as any college football team could have been at extra points. You got a guy in Will Reichert who supposedly never missed an extra point in high school, so you'd think that he could handle the pressure of kicking at the next level. And then, if you look at the A-Day game, Skylar DeLong seemed to be pretty improved in his punting duties there, and even grabbed some praise from Nick Saban. So I think that there is a ton of room for improvement in that unit, and especially when you factor in the other parts of special teams that Alabama's already done pretty well at. It could knock on wood for Alabama, but be maybe a point of strength if things pan out the way that they should based on talent.
All right, we're gonna play another voicemail. Earlier, I think it was last week, I started talking about Bama fatigue. And by the way, everyone, thanks for listening right here on the Talk of Champions. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Tony Tsoukalos. Pretty informal conversation just about Alabama football. We're always talking about various subjects on the Talk of Champions forum. So I wanted to bring Tony in, who's very well versed with the team, and play some of these voicemails for him and get his take. And we talked about Bama fatigue. Here is Robert calling in from California talking about Bama fatigue, and then we'll kind of dissect that a little bit more.
My name is Roderick Parker from Marina, California. I'm just calling. I've listened to your show talk about Bama fatigue, and being honest, man, I don't have any fatigue. And I've been a fan since '92 during the days of Gene Stallings, and I just love watching Alabama play. I don't care who they play. If it's a team that they're favored by 35 against, then I'd love to see them dominate and see how they play play to the standards that Nick Saban has set for them. And when they play a tough team like LSU or Auburn or something like that, I just love to see them compete and go out there and play their best game and see how well they do against those big time teams. As far as I'm concerned, man, I just think about the post days of Gene Stallings, and there's no such thing as fatigue. I am enjoying this time that Nick Saban has given us. I love watching the boys play hard, and yeah, that's about it, man. Roll Tide, and good job on the show, Kyle Henderson. Really enjoyed listening to you.
All right, that was Robert calling from California. Appreciate the call. We actually have one more call that's related to Bama fatigue. So this is Sean from Huntsville, and then we'll talk about this moving forward. Here's Sean from Huntsville.
Hey, this is Sean from Huntsville. I was listening to about the Bama fatigue, and I want to say that it is true. I've actually been saying this for about 2-3 years now. I know some of our fans don't want to hear it, but we've turned into wine and cheesers. We don't scream at the games anymore. We clap. I can remember when Bryant-Denny was one of the loudest stadiums to ever go in about 5 years ago. Now, there's several stadiums that's louder than ours. Several. Go to Tennessee, believe it or not. Go to the Swamp. Go up to Texas A&M. Go to LSU. These environments are totally different in Alabama, man. We got to get back hungry again. We got to get back the way we were, not just as players and coaches and things of that nature, but as fans. We got to support the team better, man. So it's not just on the players, it's on us as well.
All right, two very good calls back to back. One saying Bama fatigue doesn't exist. Sean saying that fatigue does exist. Now, Tony, I'm not asking you to be politically correct. Just answer it. You know, what's your take from an outside perspective, being a reporter on Bama fatigue? And is it something that exists? Is it something that we're just like to talk about, just kind of to stir the pot? What's your assessment, being that you do live right in Tuscaloosa?
So I think it's more of a case of I think both callers that called in, they both care about the team equally. I think they're both just as big of Alabama fans. I think the point that the second caller was making was that I think Alabama fans have maybe taken their success for granted. You can still care about a team, and then maybe if the fact that they're winning all the time, or the fact that they're blowing teams out every game, it might have dampened some of that. I guess I don't want to say the passion, because I think these fans still care, but I think they come in a little bit less worried about things. And the outcome it's become more expected, more maybe taken for granted. For example, I mean, you look at that first, maybe the 2008 season. It was louder in Bryant-Denny because I think fans were more nervous. I think that the team was unexpectedly undefeated through the regular season, and I think as time has gone by, the expectation is now bent to be undefeated through the regular season. Back then, it wasn't. I think that people expected Nick Saban to turn things around and maybe eventually get to this point, but you can't expect those kind of things when you're coming off of 2007 was a 7-6 season. So I just think that it kind of comes with being a successful team. I mean, I'm sure if you look at Clemson 5 years ago and maybe talk to them in 3 more years, then they might have some of the same comments as our callers had with Alabama. I think it's just kind of comes with being the favorite. Nick Saban's talked a lot about making a noisier, rowdier environment, and talked about the students leaving early. But when you're blowing out a team by 40 points, you're not going to stay. And I think Alabama doesn't play in a lot of close games, which also kind of hampers the environment of Bryant-Denny Stadium. I mean, you're not going to have the same environment in a 21-14 game as you are in a 40-0 game. So I think if Alabama fans felt cornered, or like if an LSU comes in here and goes up by 10 points early, I think Bryant-Denny is going to be really loud. But I don't think it's just going to magically be loud for a 40-0 win over New Mexico. Yeah, it's just not.
Hey, that's New Mexico State, New Mexico State.
That's right.
I agree, and I appreciate the calls from the two callers, and I get it. I like you. I live here in Tuscaloosa, so I'm surrounded by Alabama Crimson Tide fans, and I think all of them expect to win. I don't think the front end of the schedule is that difficult on paper. Obviously, Nick Saban would disagree with that because it's not over till it's over. But I think, some of these games are just, the game against Duke is not exciting. It's not exciting to me. It's probably not exciting to, some of the players. They would, of course, never say that, but it's a lot different feel going into this season as opposed to a couple seasons ago when they were playing Florida State, who was, ranked in the top 5 as well. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to build off that and kind of get your take on Bama fatigue. Last week, we've already talked about new measurables for that were released by Alabama football, but one player that we didn't talk about is quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who played, I guess, close to 230 pounds last year. And what is he at now, Tony? He's at 215, right? Is that correct?
Saban said that he had lost some weight, so I don't know. He's at the exact same weight. He was a no change on our list. That's what they have him listed at. I mean, sometimes Alabama, they could have listed him differently, but from what they have him listed at, he's at the same weight. But I think last year he wasn't at a bad weight, so I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for him to do. I think he might have kind of gained some unnecessary weight over the offseason. He's been able to knock that back down, in time for fall camp.
Yeah, I think because, we saw a tweet. They had like a pre-NFL combine for juniors or something like that. And it was like an NFL analyst who tweeted a picture. He said Tua was 6 foot, 230 pounds. And then, we have him listed here at 208 pounds. So I don't know. Either way, he lost some weight, but we will get a chance to see Tua throw here in the next couple days as Tua will be at the Manning Passing Academy. So we're going to have a videographer down there, and we'll be able to get those highlights right here on YouTube. So our viewers, stay tuned and watch, Tua throw. It'll be a good opportunity to see where he's at from a summer perspective. Moving on with the show, Tony and I got an opportunity this week to check out Alabama basketball. And they allowed us to watch a skill session. It was an hour skill session following a camp. We got to see a lot of the new players, got to see Coach Nate Oates work with the players. And I wanted to get your assessment on some of these new guys, Tony. I know you recently wrote about Javon Quinterly, and I think that's a good place to start. He's a player that currently would have to sit out the 2019 and 2020 season, but he's filing paperwork to get a waiver cleared so he can play this season. Is that correct, Tony?
Right. And one of the interesting things that Nate Oates told us was that Jay Wright, the head coach of Villanova, where he's transferring from, has been cooperative with it. I think they only talked via voicemails, but if Alabama has Villanova on its side, you would think that theoretically things would be a lot easier. I mean, who's fighting this then, But yeah, Javon Quinterly is currently applying for a hardship waiver. He was recruited to Arizona out of high school as a 5-star recruit. Obviously, with the FBI probe over there, kind of pushed him away from that. He kind of had to make a change in plans and go to Villanova. He's been cleared of taking money that's been disproved, and so I think he's a player that didn't play much for Villanova last season. And I think, the storyline behind, out of his camp and out of Nate Oates is that he needs a fresh start. And that's why I think what he's looking for at Alabama, whether that comes after waiting a year, whether that comes this season, that's what he's hoping is, he kind of had a disappointing freshman year, but he's definitely a player with a lot of talent that can turn things around and definitely make a difference on this Alabama team if he's able to play next year.
What did you see? By the way, if you've watched the highlights and you're wondering where Kyra Lewis was, fill him in, Tony, where Kyra was, because he wasn't at the skill session.
Yeah, Kyra Lewis recently made the cut for the USA's U19 World Cup team. They'll be playing in Greece. I think it's at the end of the month. The tournament, from June 29th to July from June 29th to July 7th. That's a big achievement for him, and that's going to get him some experience against some of the nation's, not even the nation's, the world's best youngsters. So, he's going to be with a lot of high school kids. You got to remember, Kyra graduated high school a year early, so he's going to be playing with a lot of kids going into college. But it'll be a good experience for him. And, while he's not working with Alabama, he's still working with a lot of elite talent, and they should be able to bring some stuff back from that could really help Alabama this year.
We got to see a couple new freshman faces at the skill session that Alabama had. Juwan Gary, Jaden Shackelford, new big man, Raymond Hawkins. What did you see from Shackelford and Jalen Forbes in particularly?
Jaden Shackelford and Jalen Forbes both really shoot the ball. They got smooth shots. Jalen Forbes is somebody that really caught my eye. I mean, it's like I watched him for a solid maybe 2 minutes, never saw him miss a shot. They're both confident shooters. I think that they could probably play a role. It's going to help with Nate Oates' offense is going to be more spread out. There'll be more wide open threes, and if you have guys like that that can knock them down, that could be really huge for Alabama. It's funny because Nate Oates didn't initially recruit both of those guys. Those are Avery Johnson kids, but at the same time, they really fit. I think Oates really benefited. He walked into a system that is going to really kind of mesh a lot with what he wants to do. I mean, obviously, it might not be the perfect fit of what he would have built if he would have came in here and built the whole thing from the ground up. But he walked into a team that I think is going to totally fit his style, and it will probably really ease the transition of his first year into Alabama.
I wanted to play this particular clip of Nate Oates talking about Javion Fleming, who last year played at 283. Now he's, I think, playing at 253 pounds. Looked pretty good out there. We really haven't talked about, the big man, although you did have a nice article recently. So if you're curious to read more about Alabama basketball, any of our coverage, go to the website, BamaInsider.com. Scroll down because we got a ton of content. Here's Oates talking about Javion Davis Fleming.
He looks a lot better, doesn't he? I mean, he's slimming down. He's a gym rat. He loves to be in the gym. Honestly, he's done about a 180 since we've got here. First couple weeks, I didn't think he was going to make it. He wasn't in very good shape, but his mindset wasn't great. And then he decided he wanted to be great. He spent a lot of time in the gym. He went home and lost weight when he went home. A lot of guys go home, lose the discipline from when they were here. He went home for a month and came back. I think he dropped 7 or 8 pounds when he was home. So he looks great. I mean, we're trying to get him play on the perimeter more. He's got good feet. He's got good hands. He can shoot a little bit. He'll be an inside-outside guy, and I think he likes the role we're trying to give him. So he's been in the gym working a lot. He's in the gym as much as most of the guards are in the gym working on shot and stuff. So yeah, I like what I see out of Fleming.
That was Oates talking about Fleming. Tony, what was your early assessment of some of the big guys that you saw for Alabama basketball?
I think it's more just interesting to see how Alabama is going to be using guys. I mean, you look at a guy like Galen Smith, hasn't shot a 3-point attempt during his time at Alabama. He was shooting threes in practice. He wasn't making all of them, but he made a few. And I think that's going to be an expectation if you want to play this style of basketball. You're going to need to at least have some sort of presence from range. And so I think one of the players that will benefit the most out of that is Alex Reese. He's a guy that, I think he hit 5 threes in the NIT loss to Norfolk State, but that was kind of like a preview of what he could be if he's allowed to kind of contribute more offensively and get some more time on the court. I think he's a guy that could really fit into Nate Oates' style. You've got athletic guys like Raymond Hawkins, Javion Fleming, Davis Fleming. Those guys can make a difference. I'm not sure how much Javion will play next season, but at least he's a guy that has his head in the right place and could he's athletic enough to maybe make a difference and get some minutes here and there. You got like I said, Alex Reese. So there's some definite potential on the big man. I think that's going to probably be the biggest thing is can Alabama get their big men to play Nate Oates' style of basketball? That's going to be the biggest, I think, hurdle to clear. And it looks like from the sound of it, they've been progressing pretty well so far this summer.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Well, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed what you've listened to today right here on the Talk of Champions. You can catch all our coverage back on BamaInsider.com. Of course, follow Andrew Bone. You know, those June summer recruiting nuggets are hard to stay away from. I mean, so much going on. In fact, Alabama's having the Cookout Barbecue today on June 21st, so stay tuned for a ton of updates from Andrew Bone. Also, Andrew and I will be in Atlanta over the next couple of days at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge. Tons of big-time prospects will be in attendance, so we'll catch up with those guys, bring it right here to BamaInsider.com and the YouTube channel. So stick around, spread the word. Please subscribe, follow on Twitter, Instagram, all the same. And if you are a college student, remember, you can email me, Kyle@BamaInsider.com, ask about the college promo. And if you're out of college and you still want to taste of BamaInsider.com to get behind that premium paywall, all you got to do is sign up. The promo code at checkout is simply Roll Tide. We're coming to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Stay locked on to BamaInsider.com. Tons of recruiting coverage continues to roll out from Andrew Bone. For Kyle Henderson and Tony Tsoukalis, this is the BamaInsider.com staff. Until next time, talk soon.